Tonight is Yud Daled in Adar, and tonight we read the Megillah. For most of you who have already attended the Kriyat HaMegillah, the reading of the Megillah, in previous years already understand that we are not here merely to rehearse, review the victory of this glorious event, which was the Jewish Nitzachon, the Jewish freedom from the clutches of Haman. Tonight, what we prefer and what has been provided for us is the opportunity to be able to follow the instructions of Mordechai, Daniel, and Esther, by which they themselves produced the victory and conquest over Haman and all the enemies of Israel. And that is why it is called Megillat Esther, because for the first time in the history of mankind, the Kabbalah, which was revealed 3,800 years ago by Avraham Avinu, however, never practiced by the people, and for the first time, the various combinations of the 72 names that were necessary to provide freedom, to provide conquest over our enemies, came into existence. Therefore, it is referred to as Megillat Esther, not referring to her name, which was incidentally Esther, but rather the word Esther, which means concealment. And for the first time, the Jews had the opportunity to make use of the combinations of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the Tetragrammaton, the next most powerful name of God, Eke, Aleph Kei, Yud Kei, and the combination of 72 names. This in turn brought about the victory, but it was a lesson for Jews of all times that if they wanted to take control over their lives in every aspect, the place to find it at that time would be Megillat Esther. Now, while all of this information subsequently, after Mordechai and Daniel, who returned from Israel with this information, and then subsequently this information that was already known to the Jews in Persia became a written document revealed by Moshe Rabbeinu and Eliyahu Navi to Rabbi Shimon. Unfortunately, over the past 2,000 years, we have forgotten what Megillat Esther means. We have forgotten that we can take control of our lives. And we have forgotten that God did not just send us to the dogs to be annihilated generation after generation after generation since the destruction of the temple. In our day, we have the zechut of understanding what Megillat Esther is about. We have in this document the revelation for absolute freedom. Absolute freedom. But we must have the consciousness to know, number one, what is the purpose of reading it? Number two, to understand that within this Megillah this Megillah, we have included, which is included in the Megillat Esther, every combination of the powers of the alphabet that God gave the Jews at the splitting of the Red Sea, in which they used then to create a change in the natural laws and order of the universe to that extent that they can split a sea, that today, if we understand these three requirements, to know what the Megillat Esther is about, and that it is not an instrument that has been traditionally given to the Jews to remember and recall the wonderful miracle that took place on Purim. No. More important, that we, making use of it, will in our own lives achieve a change if necessary, so that we can also continue to live in a world that may be crumbling all around us. Nevertheless, we can be not the victims, but the survivors. I want to read the Ari to make the connection to the Megillah, and so all of us, whether we understand or do not, the important thing is the reader will be meditating. Just to give you an idea, we have even colored it because it is so concealed. That's why it's called Esther. Esther coming from the word seter, concealment. That's why they call her Esther. Her name was actually Hadassah. It was not Esther. Why did they give a name Esther? Again, to provide us with a clue that we did not pick up for 2,000 years. That we were talking about Megillah, which means revelation, Esther, which means the secrets, the codes. And if you notice how in some words we utilize 3 different combinations. It is a very complex system that through the benefit of the Ari HaKadosh, who clearly define each and every single concept within the Megillah, so that when we read this Megillah today, we will be revealing the light that is necessary to remove darkness. For wars, illness, financial instability are all forms of darkness, part of the Dark Lord. If we could strike the match, that's all that's necessary. Can you imagine? Instead of going through 2,000 years and continuing into this exile, which means we're surrounded by crime, violence, recessions, etc., that we tonight, if we have no questions of the validity of Purim, that Purim for us was not a miraculous event, but for us Purim was the manifestation, for the first time in history, a people, not one sage like Rabbi Shimon, but the people, all combined to reveal such an enormous, awesome light that what we define as recessions, cancer, and you name it, that we're all familiar with, are all part of that definition called darkness. And if we can generate enough light here this evening, as this light is being generated around the globe this evening, we then can remove, to whatever extent that we have recreated in the entire environment, sufficient light to remove from this environment the darkness that unfortunately becomes stronger, excessive, by each and every single passing day. However, even chas v'shalom, we should not be successful towards changing the whole world, which is possible this evening, and only this evening. At least we shall walk out of this room knowing that our personal destiny will have been altered if it included Satan consciousness, which is darkness. Another significant point worth mentioning is this idea, and which is required to be instilled in our consciousness, because there is nothing more that can prevent illness, that can prevent financial instability, breakdown of relationships, as our own consciousness. If we fall into the trap that all around us there is a recession, depression, there are plagues, illness all around the world, and therefore we are concerned maybe it should and will affect us. If we break down into that doubt that it will affect us, unfortunately, we will upon ourselves all that which is around us. So it is essential that we never lose sight of what we captured this evening. Walk out with it and keep it, retain it, that no matter what goes on all around you, you know in your own mind that what I captured this evening has removed, as it did then for the first time in Persia, will work for us this evening. I also want to read a Zohar, strange as it may sound, which again indicates the awesome power that existed and continues to exist in Persia. Because all of us could have asked the question. There were Jews left after the destruction of the first temple in Israel. Not all Jews were banished from Israel. Why? Why did it happen in Persia? And what is even stranger than the fact that for the first time there was a revelation enough and sufficient for all of mankind to benefit from this light, the action of the Persian Jews in Persia at that time? I read you the finale of the scenario. It began in Persia, and how is it going to end? How is it going to end? Who knows? Are we prophets? But because we do not have to be prophets, says the Zohar, if we can only access into the information contained in the Zohar, we are then already prophets. We don't have to guess. We can tell what the future is going to consist of, and then intelligently observe the movements around us. Says the Zohar in Parshat Shlach Lecha, talking about Mashiach.
Hello? Yes? Is this for the Rav? Yes, just a minute.
Hello? Yes. Yes, okay. This is not the call. This is Mexico, but I'm expecting another call. Yeah, okay, ask me to hold on. I read now from the Zohar, bringing a verse from an obvious place, which deals with the subject matter under discussion, from Daniel. Verse in Daniel, chapter 5. Valzeh Samech HaMashiach, and he's discussing in this particular section the idea of Mashiach. V'samach Rosh HaYeshiva shenidvaseh b'zeh, and the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the companions, will rejoice in the fact that this is being explained, this is being brought to the forefront. And the companions, Rabbi Shimon and his companions, were sitting and asking, because in Daniel, which is in Aramaic in this particular section, he's discussing Paris Prisat Malchutecha Be'aviv Lemadai Uparas. Speaking about Mashiach, he discusses again Paras Umadai. Paras Umadai, as we will read this evening, refers to Persia. And the idea that Mashiach has to do with Persia, again, finished. History has already made its imprint on mankind. We Jews here and all over the world where they understand what the Megillah is about will take advantage of the reading this evening. But what does Persia now have to do with Mashiach? Amalo kachu vadai. Zohar says absolute. Absolute. The idea of Mashiach, again, Mashiach will be bound up with Paras. Going to be bound up again with Persia, like we could never get rid of the Persians. Paris Prisat Malchutecha Harasha'a Al Yedei Mashiach HaAcher. There will be a war. The Mashiach HaAcher, there will be two Mashiachs. Without going into the details, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. And after all of these preliminaries to the coming of Mashiach, when there will be wars with Mashiach ben Yosef, some say that he may die. Va'achar kach yishlot melech pras v'yichvosh harbei meluchot. That Persia, in the time of Melech HaMashiach, will again take control over the entire world as it once did. I can tell you personally, I have seen the plan. Plan that was established in 1976 in Persia on how to take control over the entire world. I saw it. And it's on schedule. V'yichvosh harbei meluchot. They will capture all of the countries. V'hu yishlat al eretz hakdosha. Not only will he rule all over the world, but he will also rule over Israel. Yud Bet Chodesh. His presence will be in Israel. Or what do we think? The invincible Israel, B'li Ayin Hara, let it remain so, will remain. Not under the circumstances that they present themselves. It doesn't appear how they could remain. But we believe that we are invincible in Israel. V'hu yishlot al eretz hakdosha Yud Bet Chodesh. V'hu yishlot v'yaharog rabim. And he will slaughter and annihilate many in Israel. Ubetocham, and amongst them, Mashiach Ahu, Mashiach ben Yosef. Ve'achar kach yipol melech Paras, and only then, after the 12 months, shall he fall. Very strange coincidence. Here we talk about the first time, and unfortunately, the only time that the Jews experienced Mashiach was during the time of Esther and Mordechai. Now again, in our time, that same country will emerge as the world power. Some of us have our doubts. Although Twin Towers could set some example as to where they're going, as everyone knows today, it is connected with Iran. But what does that mean for us? And why this connection? Why Persia? Why Persia? Which was our original question. Why there? Did the Jews first experience real freedom? Not in the wilderness, not during the Holy Temple, but after they were banished by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, overrun by the Babylonian Empire, only to wind up in Persia. And there, for the first time, demonstrate the power of the Zohar, demonstrate the power of the names that we make use of this evening. And again, after almost over 2,000 years, who will be the formidable foe that will capture the entire world, including Israel again? And we are under the impression, after 2,000 years, we have come in control of Israel. And here the Zohar, 2,000 years ago, is not predicting. Rabbi Shimon was not a prophet. Rabbi Shimon only knew the future, because for him, past, present, and future was all in the same frame of reference. Now, he could see all parts of the movie. It's like we go to a movie. While we may not know the end, but it's on film already, there's no problem about the end. So too is the course of history. So too is the course of history. But why there? Why again? And we come to the usual answer. For those of you who have been studying Kabbalah for a long time, know that when we discuss Jerusalem is the holy city, unlike most Jews who say the reason why the holy city is holy of Jerusalem is because the holy temple was located there, we know it's the other way around. We know the cause is not the temple. Temple is something of a physical nature. Temple is an effect. The land of Israel is the energy center of the world. The energy center mentioned in Bereshit by the Zohar in detail, where Shina, the root of all of the nourishment, not the manifestation. Europe is the manifestation of the Dark Lord. He plays games. Satan plays games. Doesn't play him only in Persia. Once in a while, he'll come around on Purim, try to annihilate all the Jews. But he was unsuccessful in his home base. So what does he do? Goes out of his home base. Because as we know, a home base of extreme negativity is like poison ivy. The poison ivy leaf is always accompanied. Adjoining the poison ivy leaf is the leaf that can cure poison ivy. Alongside every form of negativity, alongside we find positivity. The reason that Mordechai, Esther, and Daniel are in Shush or Hamadan. Daniel is in Shush. Why are they there? Because they died there? No. Because they, for all subsequent generations, whether the Jews had an idea of making use and utilizing Mordecai and Esther and Daniel, unfortunately Jews have never dreamt of taking advantage. They would go there and ask for a blessing. Little did they know that you just don't go there for a blessing. You've got to connect with them. They're not physical human beings that we come and there we are. They're connections. Those connections are mentioned in the Zohar. How do you connect when you go to visit Mordechai and Esther or Daniel? They didn't know. The reason they're there is because they, as Persia, will be dealing with the exile. With the exile. It is that buffer. When used, it is the buffer to keep the negative aspect, the Gehenom, which the sources in that area, the root, the origin of Satan is located in that area. It's like Bavel. Today, Saddam Hussein, they are there. So that if we can connect and tap their energy because they have connected to the positive side, to the positive energy that must of necessity exist there, so as to create a security shield around Satan, around his wellspring of energy. God has never created evil in the world without an appropriate accompanying magen, without an accompanying shield to secure ourselves. What we are doing this evening is connecting with Mordechai and Esther. We're connecting with Daniel so that we can tap the energy, as I will read from the Zohar. Why was his name Mordechai? That was his name. That's the kind of response you'll always get. That was his name. Not so, says the Zohar. Mordechai is a code, just as Esther is a code. And without the revelation of the Zohar and the Yeri HaKadosh, we have no access. All we can think about is physical ingenuity, how to escape, how to remain survivors as opposed to being victims, rather than take the initial step forward in creating for us, wherever we're located, wherever we are, to prevent disaster from befalling us. And therefore, tonight, we make that connection because Persia deals with the exile. Persia deals with the exile. In annihilating Satan, we must make those connections. That's what they did. That is exactly the methodology by which they were able to contain Satan and his horde. I read now from the Ari to make our connection to the reading of the Megillah. V'nei shoresh nishmat Mordechai hayta min heyara hahi. The Ari discusses what is so special about tonight. What is so special about tomorrow night? Says the Ari. When Purim happened, and this is where we have, unfortunately, been led astray. Unfortunately, have not been accessed into definitions. What happened on Yud Daled, the 14th day of Adar and the 15th day of Adar? You mean the event happened, the victory of the Jews over Haman and his group? No, says the Ari HaKadosh. These events came about. They were an effect of 2 days from the original days of creation, were instilled with the power to create freedom. From the inception of the 7 days of creation. What happened in Persia by Esther, Mordechai, and Daniel is they, for the first time, could access into these two dates. These two dates, Yud Dalet and Tet Vav, are dates of freedom. But Jews didn't have the information. They did not know that on these 2 days we have an opportunity to connect to a phenomena known as freedom. Didn't know that. Along came Mordechai, Daniel, and Esther, and said for the first time, Jews will be able to take control of their lives. Because on this day, there's a he'ara. ולכן על ידו הייתה תשועת ישראל בזמן ההוא, והוא נרמז בשם מרדכי ממש, שהוא לשון מירה דחיה, the purest of the purest energy, which means Mordechai or Mordachia in Aramaic. That on this day, there was the purest, unadulterated energy flowing into the cosmos, into the universe. Therefore, there appeared a Mordechai, so he could tell the Jews, my name is Mordechai, but you know why I'm Mordechai? Because I'm here to furnish you with a connection to the purest of the purest energy required to overcome all adversity. And when Mordechai tells Esther, if you are not going to intercede, God will help us anyway. Why did he say that? I mean, as if Esther was thinking only about her life. Is that what he thought Esther meant? No. We're not interested in the story. What we are interested in is that Mordechai was saying, these 2 days, now that the Jews have accessed in with the proper connections as we have here in the Megillah, that we have been furnished with this same information that Mordechai and Daniel had provided all the Jews at that time. He says, Esther, whether you talk to the king or you don't talk to the king, freedom is our assurance. It's there. It's assured because we have already learned the system. That's what he meant. He wasn't admonishing her as if she never expressed the idea that she did not want to intercede or that she was fearful of her own life and therefore did not want to divulge who she was. Never was the idea. But on this day, says the Ari, Tavin Malat Mordechai Sha'ala Lebchinat Malchut u'Mishna Lamelech. What does it mean he came up to be a king? Mishna Lamelech. As we learned in our discussion today, a king like Shaul had the power to change all of destiny. Because when Shaul went to battle with the Amalek, Shmuel HaNavi, Samuel the prophet says, Shaul, kill everybody. And he comes back with Agag. And Shmuel HaNavi says, didn't God say destroy everybody? Why are you coming back with the leader of the enemy? He says, I fulfilled God's words. But Shmuel HaNavi had told him, destroy Agag. And he comes back yet with a chutzpah and says, I followed every word that God had told us to do. What kind of a game was Shaul playing? The answer is that Shaul was a king. And a king, if you reach that degree, that level of consciousness, you can change history. Because Shaul said, since being a prophet, a king, he could see down the line. And he saw that the whole idea of Purim would come about through Haman. Haman was a descendant of Agag. Now, if Shaul destroyed Agag, then he was interfering with the great festivity that would take place known as Purim. And therefore he was following the wishes of God that had already inserted in this video cassette the story of Purim. Said Shmuel, no. We could have cut and spliced the video right then and there. We didn't have to go through the movements and motions. We could cut out the scene of where he's threatening the Jews and they have to fast, and the whole story wasn't necessary. He could have, at that moment, taken control of destiny. This is what Mordechai did for us tonight, that we too can take control of our own destiny. And this will be accomplished. This will be accomplished if, to the extent that you understand what I'm trying to say this evening, we're talking about personal freedom, nothing less and nothing more. Chag Sameach. Hi, Isaac. Oh, I just want you to make the connection.